Hello, my name's Patrice and I'm the author of Indigo Donut and Orange Boy.
Hi, I'm Malorie Blackman and I've written a number of books, including the Noughts and Crosses series and Boys Don't Cry. I always try and write characters who connect with the reader, and the way I do that is to try and create a character that will make the reader want to empathise with them or identify with them. And what I try and do is make sure that they are three-dimensional characters, so I'll do a mini biography of their lives. And also try and include in that character the good bits and the bad bits about that character, so that they don't just come across as a hero or really good at something. They have to have their foibles and they have to have things wrong with them, and hopefully that will help the reader to identify with them.
How do I connect with the reader? Well, I believe really passionately that young people are funny, creative, innovative, and have fantastic stories to tell. So I spend a lot of time eavesdropping on buses, listening to what young people say, sitting in a basement carefully earwigging all my daughter's friends to see what their conversations are about. And when I write books, particularly with Orange Boy, my concern was I'm writing about a young man of colour who gets involved in crime. So my way of making him connect to the reader was, one, thinking about what's happening in his life, what are his good things, making him a bit geeky and he's into Star Trek and the Matrix, and then thinking, why would somebody so lovely do something bad? So my way of connecting was really thinking about all of us. How far would we go to protect somebody we love, and then putting that in my character's voice.
My Share a Story challenge to you is based on chapter 24 of Noughts and Crosses. And what I want you to do is think about, you're travelling on a train or a tube or a bus or whatever, it could be even a spaceship or a rocket, with a best friend, and then somebody comes on board, an official, and says that you are no longer allowed to travel with your friend. Now think about who your friend is. Is it your best friend? It could be your parent, it could be a mum or a dad or a guardian, it could be an animal, it could be your pet. But think about who your best friend is that you're travelling with, and then think about this person coming towards you and then saying you're not allowed to travel anymore, and they want to bounce you off the train or whatever vehicle it is that you're on. So what I want you to do for this writing challenge is to think about what they say to you, what you would say to them, and then what your best friend would say at the end of your conversation with this person who wants to throw you off the train. And the thing is, if you really feel it when you're writing it, then the reader will feel it when they're reading it. And that's what I try and do. I try and kind of really feel with my characters and what they're going through. So I will try and do that when I'm writing the story, and hopefully the reader will get that when they read it.
My Share a Story reading challenge for you is to think about how far would you go to protect the people you care about. In Orange Boy, Marlon has promised his mum that he's not going to go the same way as his brother. Andre was a bit of a bad boy, and Marlon has said, no, I'm not going to do that. But then something happens and he finds that his family is under threat, his best friend is being threatened, and suddenly his whole outlook changes. When I grew up, occasionally I'd be called names, and for me, it wasn't too bad because I was happy with who I was. But if somebody said something about my mum or my brothers or my friends, then a whole new character emerged inside me. So what I want you to think about is, what would you do if something happened, or there was some threat to your friends or your family? How far would you go, and how far do you think Marlon should go?
And when you've finished your writing or your reading challenge, feel free to share your story with your classmates, your friends, your teachers, or your parents. I'm reading from Noughts and Crosses, and this is about a girl called Sephi, who's a cross, and her best friend Callum, who's a nought. And in their society, Noughts and Crosses aren't encouraged to mix, but they've been best friends forever. And the section I'm going to read from is chapter 24. This is Callum's chapter, because the chapters are told alternately. And this is when they're on their way to Celebration Park, and they're in a first-class carriage. Callum has never been in a first-class carriage before. We were on our way to Celebration Park. There were only 3 more stops to go when they got on. Police officers on a routine inspection. 2 of them, boredom plastered over their faces. ID passes, please. ID passes, please. Sephi looked surprised. I wasn't. We both dug out our ID cards as they made their way up the first-class train carriage. I watched the cursory glances they gave the ID passes of all the crosses in the carriage. I was the only nought. Would they stop and ask me lots of questions? Is pig poo smelly? An officer of trim build and sporting a pencil-thin moustache stood right in front of me. He looked at me and then took my ID pass without a word. Name? He snapped out. What's the matter? Can't you read? Callum McGregor. Age? 15. Can't read numbers either, eh? That's too bad. Where are you going? None of your business. Celebration Park. Why? To cut my toenails. Picnic. Where do you live? On the moon. Meadowview. The officer looked from my ID card to my face and back again. My thumbprint was on the card. Was he going to break out a magnifying glass and ask me to hold out my right hand so he could compare the imprint on the card with my print? It wouldn't have surprised me. You're a long way from home, boy. I bit down on the inside of my bottom lip, not trusting myself to speak. Both officious officials stood in front of me now. There was barely enough room to get a paperclip between their legs and my knees. I sighed. Ladies and gentlemen, for your delectation and delight, another performance of You're a Naught, and don't you ever forget it, Blanca boy. Let me see your ticket. I handed it over. Where did you get the money to buy this kind of ticket? I looked up at them, but didn't speak. What was there to say? They had the scent of blood in their nostrils, and I didn't stand a chance, no matter what I said or did. So why bother? I asked you a question, Moustaches reminded me, as if I'd forgotten. Did you buy this ticket? Moustache's accomplice asked. The truth or prevarication? What was Seffi thinking? I couldn't see her. The no-brain brothers were in the way. If only I could see her face. I asked you a question, boy. Did you buy this ticket? No, I didn't, I replied. Come with us, please. Time to get my posterior pummeled. Time to get my derriere dealt with. Time to get my bum bounced right off the train.
This is an extract from Orange Boy where Marlon, the main character, realises that he and his family are being targeted and some boys have actually broken into his house and vandalised it and threatened him. This was what Mum had worked so hard to keep me away from. Extra hard after she lost Andre. But I hadn't chosen this world. A portal had gaped open and sucked me in. If I didn't do something, it was going to swallow me up. Mum too. In the kitchen, I opened a drawer, looking for the long knife right at the back. I ran my fingers along the narrow blade. It was completely blunt, but that didn't matter. It was how I styled it off. All I needed was a sly flash, just like de-ice. But was that enough? What if they were coming at me? What if it was me or them? What if I had to use it? I needed more than style. That knife, right there, jammed between two wooden spoons, metal handle, metal blade, made in one piece. I held it. It was cold in my palm and it didn't quite nestle. It wasn't designed for that. It was meant to be used. I let it clank back in and slammed the drawer shut.